Calling the policy meeting for May to order. Ms. Kadetsky, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Melissa Mason,
Here.
Ms. Pat Bradford,
I am here.
Stephanie Crable,
Here. Now let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving on, I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
And I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Passes 3-0. I would also accept a motion to approve the minutes.
Madam Chair, so moved.
I will second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please signify your approval by saying aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Moving right along to policy 3200.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I move
ma'am.
that we consider 3200 and, gosh, I've already forgotten it. The other one together,
300.
because they're the same language. 3200 and 7200 together at the same time.
And I will second that. Any discussion on policies, on combining policies 3200 and 7300, the discussion of those? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. Let's move into the discussion of these two policies. I did have a board member reach out to me asking to just voice some concerns that she had, and I willingly said that she could voice those concerns. Ms. Josie Barnhart, if you could come up to the podium, you have about 5 minutes, or less if you can.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had sent you an email previously, as well as the rest of the policy committee, to consider some of the concerns and openly address those today and walk through those with our staff. One of the concerns that was brought to the attention was post-secondary education, such as trade school, military. Another idea that came up was sports and banners as far as sponsorship levels and different things that are within our schools. And one of the biggest thing, and I also think this is a beautiful thing in a lot of our schools, we do have cultural representation of our students that come from different countries. And so I think that that's something that we should openly address and talk about so that we can have consistency in advising our staff with the implementation of this policy. I have openly stated that I don't believe that education should be a platform for activism inside the classroom. And so I know that there had been a few years ago a training talking about free speech and how we as the entity of education is here for quality education. And so that might be something that we would want to consider looking at again as far as what the expectation is. But with the growing unrest that we're seeing just around the country of different things, it's concerning. We need to make sure that we remain schools to have a neutral stance and provide quality education for all. But I think that some of the concerns, and then the last thing, and we kind of addressed this, just having a conversation about it, is just the personal displays. And so having decorations of color and of hand-drawn pictures and things like that, I know that we all want those same things for our students and we want those encouragement. But having that line of expectation, because currently right now it's based on the admins, and there's differences of opinions of what is and isn't, and so it's our job as a board to be able to clearly define the expectation so that it's not inconsistent between schools what that is. And so really with that, just having the conversation and hearing that, I know I'm not part of it today, but just making sure we have those conversations so we can openly discuss that, and hearing what needs the legal grounds and where we can make some tweaks to ensure that we're having all of those conversations openly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, thank you. Yes, Ms. Bradford.
Just to clear up the first thing, the morning after our board meeting, I became aware of the policy that I proposed had been sent with a clerical error for the screen as different. I had handed it to all the board members correctly. I had given it to the board members the week before. I had given it by email, but an earlier version got picked up by clerical, my mistake. I take full responsibility for it, but I informed the clerk. I informed her, and she sent it out to all the stakeholders, including the board members, the very next morning after the meeting, saying that the post-secondary institutions had been left off the policy that was put up there. That was what I thought that I was voting yes on. So I'm going to make a motion now to, you all have it again. I've sent it multiple times. I'm going to make a motion now to pass the policy, the language, with that inclusion for both 3,200 and 7,300.
Do I hear a second? Hearing none, I want to kind of continue some of that discussion.
Ms. Mason?
Yes, Ms. Craven.
Can you see that my hand is raised? I just want to make sure that I can contribute.
There it
in a way
is.
that you can see me.
I did not see it. I was looking down. But go ahead.
Okay. So, all right. So, first of all, I do want to clarify that, and I'm on my phone because I can't get the computer to connect where I am. Excuse me?
Nope, nothing. You're good.
Yeah, no, people are talking. So, what is posted, I do believe, and could you check that for me because I can't do it on my phone while I'm on the Zoom. It does not match what we approved on May 7th, and it almost matches what was handed to us at the budget work session. So could you just pull up the policy that we're looking at so that I can point that out for you?
Madam Chair, I'm happy to read it.
Can you see it, Ms. Craven?
All right, so, yeah, I can see it, but scroll down, you're in 3,200. Okay, so scroll down to B3, where she is proposing, and see, technically, it should be already inserted there, but it's not, but we'll go with that. B3. I don't, keep going, I don't see it in there.
Correct. So this particular policy was
But
already sent.
All right, I'll go ahead and read it to you.
This
Yes, so
particular,
it's
well, hang on,
supposed
Ms.
to be
Crabo.
posted for us all to see.
This particular policy was already sent to NCSBA, and so when it was brought back, that particular section was not there anymore, that this language was to be put in. That's why it's in a separate document. Did I get that?
I know that, but we
Okay.
still have to insert it and show.
Absolutely,
Thing.
absolutely.
The piece of paper that we got says, principals and teachers shall limit displays in the classroom, school buildings, ball fields, school grounds, and buses. And so in one iteration, Ms. Bradford gave us by hand, but not written where we could all see it, has ball fields. And that was the one she also gave us at the budget workshop. But the one we voted on did not have ball fields on it. So I am just confused if we're now taking out ball fields or not. So if you go back and look at what we approved on May 7th, ball fields was not in it. But what I have in my hand that is proposed has ball fields. So we need to clarify that point too. If it's such an emergency, then we need to have it right.
I'm looking at the documents, and I don't see ball fields in any of these documents.
It's in this one.
That one.
See the red language?
Would you click on the...
I got it, I got it,
Go to...
I got it. That's,
this one, Ms. Bradford, do you have any more copies of them? I sent them that way, sorry.
This is why that needs to be written down for us all to see.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Bradford.
may I
If
explain
this
a
is so
second time? Ms.
It
Crable?
should have been written
Hang on.
down and posted.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to have Ms. Bradford explain.
Miss Bowie sent it to you the morning after our meeting, sent it to everybody, including all of the principals. That's the same copy we're looking at now. I explained that a few minutes ago. Perhaps your Zoom wasn't working,
I heard
but
you,
that's
Pat.
what we're
I'm just
working
saying,
from. That's what we're
Ladies.
working
Look at
from.
what's posted, because I can't.
If you go back to your email the morning after our last board meeting, you'll find it right there.
I don't want to look at the email, I want to look at what's posted.
Ladies.
Because that's what we're talking about.
This is not productive.
It
To
is
make
not
it a-
productive, and that is it. It's not productive because we're not following our rules. And so I am having a real time even having this conversation because what Ms. Barnhart pointed out was if we had been preventative, like Ms. Bradford suggests that we should be with these policies, then we would have sought input from senior staff and principals before we put this emergency situation policy in play, and we don't even have an
Madam Chair,
emergency.
point of order.
It also
Okay.
says that, and Mr. Vogt
Madam Chair, point of
said,
Ms.
order.
Crable
we have to define
Point of order.
emergency.
has been
You
stated.
guys are crazy. This is not a point of order. I'm trying to figure
Madam
out
Chair.
what-
It was called, and I have to listen to it. Yes, Ms. Bradford, your point of order?
Madam Chair, point of order. The member on Zoom
Is Ms. Crable?
is speaking in violation of
Crable.
decorum. She is in violation of Robert's Rules of
I am
Order.
not.
440, debate must be confined to the merits of the pending question. Speaker must address remarks to the chair, maintain a courteous tone, and especially in reference to any divergence of opinion, avoid interjecting a personal note into the debate. I object to
Thank
the
you,
personal
Policy
remarks
Expert.
made by the
Ms.
board member
Mason,
on
May I
Zoom.
address you, please? Ms. Mason, may I address you, please?
Surely.
So, can you have somebody pull up for me what is posted online for our discussion today? So that we can see it on the screen.
Madam Chair, you have to rule.
That's all I'm asking.
So, pausing for a moment, I'm going to rule that the point of order is well received, and we can, I don't know if we have access to the, do we have, what we have on the screen is what we have posted, to my understanding, and that is what I'm getting from our team here. To address the concerns that Ms. Barnhart brought up, in addition to some of the concerns that the principals and teachers have brought forward, I wanted to kind of discuss the addition of some other materials that we would want to be able to have posted. I believe that Ms. Barnhart had mentioned sponsorships, and knowing that those are very important to our district, I think that that language should be included in policy. Additionally,
Where?
In this policy, I haven't finished yet. Additionally, as Ms. Bradford had mentioned, postgraduate displays that include trade schools, college, and military, family photos, student art, and school-sponsored events were points that I heard from administration, from principals, from teachers that were concerned. So I would like to make a motion to add the following to the list. I'll read the whole policy. Principals and teachers, this is 3,200. Principals and teachers shall limit displays in the classrooms, school buildings, ball fields, school grounds, and buses, such as signs and flags, to materials that represent the United States and other nations. The state of North Carolina, New Hanover County, the school name and mascot, post-secondary institutions, school-sponsored events, sponsorships, family photos, student art, and/or the approved curriculum.
Second.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for my clarification question is for our ball fields, we have company sponsorship.
Yep, and that should be part of the sponsorship.
So-
I said sponsorships,
You
yes?
did.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, you did.
Okay, so when, just for clarity, because
That's
there's a
fine.
lot going on.
I know, there's a lot, there's a
So
lot.
principals
You
and
want to read
teachers
it
shall.
again?
Yes.
I can read it again if you like.
Okay, that'd be great.
So principals,
Miss Mason, point of order.
yes, Ms. Craybill.
Is it possible to have Ms. Kadetsky type this up while she's sitting there and post it? You're reading in a lot of information that I'm having a hard time following.
Are you able to do?
And I'm sure others in the room and others watching on TV are too. Ms. Bowie has been able to do this at our regular meetings, and I don't see why Ms. Kadetsky can't type that up for us. Because it sounds like you already know what you're going to say, so just give her what you have.
Well, it's on a sticky note. So, to reiterate, I'd like to make a motion to add or amend the following two policies, 7300 and 3200. For 3200, principals and teachers shall limit displays in the classrooms, school buildings, ball fields, school grounds, and buses, such as signs and flags, to materials that represent the United States and other nations, the state of North Carolina, New Hanover County, the school name and mascot, post-secondary institutions, school-sponsored events, sponsorships, family photos, and student art, and/or the approved curriculum. That should be part of post-secondary. Military should be part of post-secondary.
And I seconded that.
So just a clarifying question.
Again,
So what's different than what we already did?
we added, there seemed to be some questions as far as displays that were allowed. So I was adding some clarifying language to the school-sponsored events, the sponsorships, the family photos, and the student art, so that there was clarification for teachers and principals so that they know what can be displayed.
Okay. No, if they have any questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we, all right, so when you say display, this is one of the things that I think a lot of principals have questions about. When we see the word display, are you just talking about signs and banners or anything that is on display? Because things that are on display may not necessarily be a sign or a banner. So, does that make sense? So, for example, a piece of ceramics is not student art, but it's on display. It's a display, but it would not be covered under this. Does that make sense?
Ms. Bradford.
So a piece of pottery would be on display because because it is part of the curriculum, or a student brought it in, or it's just an object of art that's admired?
Yes.
Okay, object of art.
Ms. Mason, my hand is up when you get a chance to come back to somebody.
Yes, Ms. Craybill.
So, I think we all, post-secondary means trade schools and that kind of stuff, as well as military.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
All right, so I think we should probably say it since we're getting specific. The, what I am concerned about is, one of the policies, I think it's 3620 maybe, or no, it's not, it's 5210, where we're talking about what's allowed to, PTAs are allowed to display things according to policy 5210. School clubs are allowed to display things. So what concerns me is several board members have been going around to schools and giving their opinions to principals on this is good and this is not good. So are we going to have some sort of checklist so that we're not going back to question the principal? And what's considered curriculum? You know, is it DPI curriculum? Is it, the like social emotional learning curriculum that we're getting from other places? Is it, yeah, so I need a little clarification on what curriculum means.
Let me.
Madam Chair, is the board attorney on?
Mr. Vogel, are you on? Yes, he is.
Could he address some of those things, ma'am?
Mr. Vogel, would you be willing to address any of these concerns?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a rapid fire list
I know.
of things, but the last thing I noted was the inquiry about Ms. Crable asking what is meant by curriculum, approved curriculum. And I think what the board knows that the board approves the curriculum locally that the school district presents to the board. So that's what is meant by curriculum. That's how we would interpret the term approved curriculum for the school district.
And I would say additionally, that would include those that don't have a formalized curriculum as far as second language, things of that nature. I would say that those are curriculum as well.
So here's my point. You would say that, but would I say that, or would any other board member say that, or would a teacher or principal say that? Some of this is getting pretty subjective, and I've already heard about some subjectivity that's been going on with school visits. And I'm concerned about that.
I'm unaware of any school visits myself, so I can't speak to any of that. Curriculum,
If there's any principals in the room, you might ask them.
if you would like to.
Don't do that.
Well, here's the other thing
Okay,
that
no, you don't have to if you don't.
Okay, well, I was gonna answer that, but one of the other things, like, when I read 5210, and I know that, I mean, it's display of non-school material, I think a lot of these things are already covered in 5210 of what can and cannot be on display, like, under C3, it says what agencies and organizations are able to display, and that word display is in there again. Under D, it's display standards for non-school materials, and just the process for what that needs, like what is allowable, what's not allowable, and the process for what to do on either side.
That would be my question. I think the policy, as we keep adding more and more things to it, is covered in existing policy.
I agree.
I don't know the need to add a policy, but 5210 has already discussed a lot of different things and the responsibilities of classroom teachers in schools for what we put up. And it's been there.
Madam Chair?
If I might, just after we passed this policy, there was a meeting and many questions were sent to us. Or if people were able to attend the meeting, they received the questions. My addition of those materials, those items, is to answer some of the questions and provide that clarification. Because even if it is in 5210, it provides it in these policies as well and double covers. And provides that clarity to all administrators, principals, APs, teachers within the district. That was my goal in adding those extra words into it, not to interfere with 5210, but to make sure that the questions were answered and to show that we were listening and to show that we heard and we wanted to provide that clarification. Ms. Bradford, you had
Oh, I was just going to,
Commentary.
if Mr. Vogel would address, Mr. Vogel, you know the legal precedent on this. This has been tested in courts and so on, and Union County does it with, and they told me they did it with absolutely no concern. Do you know anything about objects of art? Principal May brought up a piece of pottery in a classroom just for the appreciation of the piece of pottery, not something a student had designed. not part of the curriculum.
Mr. Vogel, if you could answer that, that would be great.
Okay. So if the question is whether the board can restrict or wants to restrict whether there's a piece of art in the classroom that doesn't relate to the curriculum or the United States or the various other categories, the school district, I don't know if they would want to do that. They could do that, but it would be subject to First Amendment principles because teachers still have First Amendment rights in the schools, and there are some tests and some restrictions on what those First Amendment rights are. So, for example, a teacher can act as a citizen, matter of public concern in the school, but restriction is that he cannot necessarily post something or say something that imparts knowledge that would be contrary to school district policy. So if you take a piece of art, it might not fall into that category. So, there are probably lots of different hypotheticals, and a policy like this is one that the school district, through the superintendent, and through human resources, would seek legal counsel to ensure that the policy is implemented in a manner consistent with the First Amendment, which is really no different from lots of other policies that involve free speech and free expression. There are rules, but there are also First Amendment rules.
So, just for clarification, what you're saying is a piece of art falls under the First Amendment and would not necessarily be addressed by policy, or?
I'm saying it depends. And I know that's an annoying answer, and one that maybe people complain lawyers give too often, but it all depends on the facts of the particular scenario. So if the question is, the teacher puts a piece of art on his or her desk, will the teacher get in trouble? Because it could be considered a display that's not related to the curriculum. And the answer is it depends.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mason?
Yes, Ms. Craybill?
Okay, so I'd like to hear more about the comment that Ms. Bradford made and asked Mr. Vogel to weigh in on about the Union County policy, which I sent to all of you too, that it holds up in court. And I am just wondering, since Union County doesn't use the NCSBA policy manual, have we checked in, has Mr. Vogel checked in with the lawyers at NCSBA about this? Because from what I understand from talking to several people in Union County, that this was a mere subjective policy, and they had board members going around and senior staff going around making subjective calls and on that. So that was a drawback. So I would like to know more about its defensibility in court, since Ms. Bradford alluded to the fact that it was already been defended in court. Could we hear from that?
Mr. Vogel, could you attest to the legality or whether this has been addressed in court?
I don't think I said it was addressed in court.
Yeah, it's legal for a school board to choose to restrict what signs, displays will be featured in a classroom or school hallway or school ground. I mean, that's permissible. But that type of restriction is subject to First Amendment. So there have been cases that have looked at these types of things, and what the courts do is they examine whether, for example, a teacher is acting as a private citizen on an issue of public concern. And often, some of these cases look at different displays, something that's posted on a bulletin board in the classroom or something like that. And the precedents indicate that that type of display is what the courts call curricular, not curricular in the sense of the school board approved curriculum, but curricular in the sense that the information is intended to impart knowledge. And that would not be something that teachers can do as private citizens on a matter of public concern. They would not have the First Amendment right to do that. So that's generally how the cases go on this, but all depends on the facts and circumstances of individual cases.
Ms. Mason, may I have a follow-up? I'd like to know if you can tell us any cases so that I can look them up myself.
I would like to move this along. If Mr. Vogel has any cases, perhaps he can send them to us via email.
Then I'd like to make the official request that he does make that to you, please. Because we can't just be throwing around that this has happened before when it hasn't happened before. And we've already talked about this with policy 5020 several meetings ago when one of our board members said, why are we the only ones doing this? Well, there's only 2 people in the whole state that are doing it, to my knowledge right now. Union County and now us. So I would like to see some verbiage on that. And I'd like to see them cited in our policy.
Mr. Vogel, if there is any case, study information, precedent that has been, has occurred with this type of policy, would you be able to add that or send that to myself, and then I will forward that to Ms. Kadetsky?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are 30 minutes in. We have a lot to cover. I want to keep moving. So there was a motion and a second, and so I am going to ask for a vote.
Would you please read it again? Would you
Absolutely.
Please read it again?
I was getting ready to. The motion was to amend policies 7300 and 3200 to include, with the verbiage, principals and teachers shall limit displays in the classrooms, school buildings, ball fields, school grounds, and buses, such as signs and flags, to materials that represent the United States and other nations, the state of North Carolina, New Hanover County, the school name and mascot, post-secondary institutions, school-sponsored events, sponsorships, family photos, and student art, and/or the approved curriculum.
Madam Chair, just a point of order. 7300 starts out slightly different.
Yes.
It doesn't start out with the word principal. It starts out, all New Hanover County employees shall. So I would rather we split those. I mean, we vote on them, but we vote on the language that we're looking at, so we don't get into one of those clerical error things again. We can do it in 2 if you want. I don't care.
I think to just look at them together. So we'll have to think about the split.
I will amend my motion. I move that we add, that we amend policy 7300. This is going to be a very long motion, so that we amend policy 7300 to say, all New Hanover County school employees shall limit displays in the classroom, school buildings, ball fields, school grounds, and buses, such as, signs and flags, to materials that represent the United States and other nations, the state of North Carolina, New Hanover County, the school name and mascot, post-secondary institutions, school-sponsored events, sponsorships, family photos, student art, and/or the approved curriculum, and policy 3200 to say, Principals and teachers shall limit displays in the classroom, school buildings, ball fields, school grounds, and buses, such as signs and flags, to materials that represent the United States and other nations, the state of North Carolina, New Hanover County, the school name and mascot, post-secondary institutions, school-sponsored events, sponsorships, family photos, student art, and/or the approved curriculum. Do I hear a second?
Ms. Mason?
I'd like to make a motion to amend that because you left off trade school and the military.
Doesn't need to be said.
Yes, sir.
Just curious, what about holiday displays or staff photos or things like that? Would they be covered in there?
I did not see those
I
questions
think
in there.
what the
Maybe I
attorney
skipped
had
over
said,
them, but
they're fine.
I just,
at
that's
this
the-
point,
That's the fear on our end about the subjectivity of it, so we could keep adding, but I think things might keep coming up, so, because those are good additions, we appreciate them very much, and you guys listening, but, you know, just because we didn't think of them now, there are more, but like even with those, I think holiday displays would not be covered. As in a lot of elementary schools or high schools, maybe not as much, but certainly elementary schools do a lot with holidays and different displays, and technically they could be up for somebody to oppose as against policy.
And I also have religion, and I have a cross on my desk.
you're cutting out. What was that, Ms. Crable?
Along those same lines, was teachers are concerned about can they have a cross on their desk or a Star of David on their desk? Are we exploiting anything religious in a personal manner on your desk?
Well, that's covered by First Amendment restrictions.
Mr. Vogel, what is the general practice as far as including religious symbols in a classroom,
On the desk.
on the desk?
Well, to begin, I didn't mention this earlier, but I don't know that necessarily something that a teacher puts on his or her desk is covered by the policy. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. We could speak with superintendent and human resources about whether it's covered. But the analysis is the same as what I described before. That the school board, school district has the right to restrict what displays are shown in a classroom, in a school building, and the like, subject to First Amendment rights. Now, the question is there a First Amendment right to put a religious symbol on the teacher's desk? It all will depend on the facts and circumstances. Is it such that it provides from the letter of the school and is intended to impart knowledge to the students, or is it just a little, knick-knack, how we call it, on the teacher's desk? It all depends. Really not in a position right here to say yes or no on a particular scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think we're going to have to.
Ms. Crable? Ms. Crable? Ms. Crable? Ms. Crable? We're going to vote on this.
Ms. Mason?
What do you want?
Ms. Mason?
Yes, sir.
I apologize. Just a thought. In your motion, you said school-sponsored events. And in policy 5210, it states school-sponsored publications and materials, and it's defined. I want to make sure that, calendars, cafeteria menus, our emergency procedures, all of those things would fall under school-sponsored publications and materials. So if you could make that slight change, I would appreciate it.
We can cross-reference it.
We just cross-referenced.
Too. We do that with a lot of the
Okay.
policies. so.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
And this applies to the Board of Education building too,
Miss-
right?
Ms. Crable, Ms. May has
Is
got the
this-
floor.
Can you ask Ms. Bradford if displays means on walls? Is that what we're trying to do, is talk about what's on the walls, or Is that what we mean by signs and flags displays?
Ms. Bradford, if you could. Again, I don't have a law degree. The only one in the room that I know of is on the Zoom. And so I would put that question to him. But a family picture on a desk, I don't think that is a display.
Right.
So, you know, if it's, I think Ms. Barnhart said it well in terms of, you know, if you're advocating for a cause and you put that on her desk, that's probably going to be suspect. We want to, just exactly what this says is what we want to accomplish. And we don't want advocacy going on in the classroom. And so it would be subjective. Again, if you had a piece of art and it had a swastika, I can't say it. Anyway, had one of those on it, that would probably be offensive and would probably not be a great idea. And I would expect that to have some attention. So, you know, there's things that depend, but I know you're a rule follower, I'm a rule follower, but you've got resources with human resources, you've got the superintendent, you've got the attorney, so you could just run that question by him, because what my opinion doesn't really count of what you can have and what you count. It's what the policy says and how it's interpreted legally.
Well, and I'm trying to understand the intent. Like, is the intent, could we just have a policy that says we're not allowed to have advocacy happening? Is that a?
We probably already have that. But
Right. Like, I feel like 5210 says that, and so does, 3200 kind of also says that too. And like, we talked about, when we were looking at 3200, we talked about controversial, complex materials, complex issues, and this was a big part of that discussion of what constitutes controversial, complex issues, and then what are the professional requirements for anything related to controversial or complex issues in our schools. So I feel like we have that whole advocacy thing, that's already in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it's the word display.
Yes.
Just a separate note, I was just informed that streaming went down, but the full meeting is being recorded and it will be uploaded after it is done. Okay. Made a motion. We got a second. I'm going to not call the question, but I'm going to call for a vote on that motion. If I need to read it again, I will.
You're good.
I make a motion to amend policy 7300 to say, limit displays in the classroom, school buildings, ball fields, school grounds, and buses, such as signs and flags, to materials that represent the United States and other nations, the state of North Carolina, New Hanover County, the school name and mascot, post-secondary institutions, school-sponsored events, sponsorships, family photos, student art, and/or the approved curriculum, and to amend policy 3200 to say principals and teachers shall limit displays in the classroom, school buildings, ball fields, school grounds, and buses, such as signs and flags, to materials that represent the United States and other nations, the state of North Carolina, New Hanover County, the school name and mascot, post-secondary institutions, school-sponsored events, sponsorships, family photos, student art, and/or the approved curriculum. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Yes, opposed.
That passes 2-1. That was the amendment, and now I will make a motion to move this to the board. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, you know what, brings my,
Yes, Ms. Craybill, my apologies.
and so let's have a nice act, thoughts on my end. The motion that I don't think is going to go to the whole board because we declined to add in trade schools and the military. We did not put in, but Mr. Anderson asked about materials, not just events. We didn't make any rulings on politics, didn't make any rulings on religious symbols, except if, it depends, And so I think we need more wordsmithing on this, and we don't have any references to any legal on there. So I don't think it's ready to go to the whole board.
Thank you. So there was a motion and a second to move move both of these policies onto the board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes, no, opposed.
That passes 2 to 1. Moving on to the next policy, which would be policy 5210. Was there any discussion on that? Yes, Dr.
I'm sorry,
Barnes.
just a point of clarification. If we are moving this back to the board, I don't know if Mr. Vogel can guide us, should we go ahead and hold off on making any sweeping changes in buildings until this changes? Would you want us to change and then change back? I'm just a little unclear how you want me to guide principals in the next couple of weeks until this goes back to the full board.
Mr. Vogel, could you advise on Dr. Barnes' concerns?
I'd say there's a policy that's currently in place on a temporary basis, pending, a potential change to policy on a permanent basis. As to how and whether to enforce the temporary policy in the next couple of weeks, I'd say, Dr. Barnes, why don't you confer with our firm outside of this meeting on that, please?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so will we get an update on that at the board meeting in June, what that conferring looks like?
I'm sure that we will be able to receive that information, yes.
Can I ask a
Ask
question?
Mr. Wilson to put it on the agenda.
Yes, Dr. Faust.
So I had already, and I'm sorry, Dr. Barnes, we had already told the principals that it was already in force. So I don't want it to be conflicting. So we're going to continue with what we had already told them. And then once the entire board votes, then we can come back with that. I'm sorry for the central office. Given that, we'll take that back. We'll continue with what we have. I'm sorry.
My fault, I apologize.
All right. Moving on to 5210. This has been moved several times. The original placement of it was NCSBA changes. Ms. Bradford, I believe you had moved it forward. Were there any additions, subtractions,
I'm
changes?
good. I move we move it forward as is.
And I will second that. Any discussion on moving forward 5210?
Yes, I have a couple things.
Yes, Ms. Crable.
In section A, first paragraph on 3, there is a, when it says complaint, it should be compliant. First paragraph on 3.
Mine says compliant. Oh, I see it. Never mind. I do see that. Thank you.
Okay, so, and then I just want us to go back to 7,300 and 3,200 revisions are in conflict with letter B, distribution of displays by students, and letter C, display by non-students. And then it doesn't say anything about school PTAs and boosters. So, like Ms. May had said, 5210 says a lot of things that 3,200 and 7,300 do not allow. So now we have, again, conflicting policies, and your motion about 7,300 and 3,200, you didn't make a reference that we were going to reference policy 5210, so that's kind of an outage. And then it says also, letter D1, paragraph 2, last line, the superintendent consults with the board attorney on things that are conflicting, not the school board. So the letter F5, school curriculum related, and F6, PTA's boosters. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that we're not, that 5210, as presented by the NCSBA, I'm fine with those. But we still do have conflicts, and it's going to become an issue down the road.
All right.
Those are my comments.
Thank you. So I'm going to amend the motion to fix this is it's page 27 of our documents, first page of policy 5210. That first paragraph in A, to correct the misspelling. But I would like to move this forward with that correction. That is my motion.
I think I'll second
I didn't say that initially.
that. Okay, then I will second that.
All right. All those in favor of moving this forward with the corrections, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Was that a yay or a nay, Ms. Craybill?
It was the yay. It was I 3-0.
Okay. All right, thank you. That one is moving forward. Next policy, policy 3210. This was brought forward because I believe Dr. Faison had made some adjustments to the request for a reconsideration form. So, Dr. Faison, if you could speak to that.
Yes, and I don't know, we actually made some revisions to the policy itself. I'm assuming that we've already adopted that because those red lines are not in there, so we're just doing the reconsideration form itself. Okay, all right. So I'll walk through those changes. So with the reconsideration form, what we did was actually streamline and did the language and try to make sure that the forms themselves were parent-friendly and kind of made sure all the language fit from 3200 and 3210. So if you look at the first section, the first thing we did was we added a step to talk to the school before completing the form. We did not have that step in the initial policy. So you'll notice that. We also asked the principal to make sure that their executive director knew that a formal process was being put in place. If a parent actually was completing the form, to let their executive director know that the process was being put in place. That is in the first section for the directions, and that first challenge, directions for a challenge. Okay. And then if you'll go down to the second part, school level, you'll see that we added that some of the schools, if you're talking about the Isaac Bear, your CTEC, they do not actually have a media coordinator. So we said the principal would actually assign someone to complete that process. And the second part where it says the MTAC chairperson will, we outline the chairperson's role. And I'll stop, and I want to make, if you have any questions, please. Yes.
Go back to that first section.
Yes.
Where number 3, where you say the principal will also inform their executive director. Who is their, and who is the executive director? It's not clear to me who that is. I can assume, but I want to be clear.
So each principal has an executive director. That is Lauren, Jarrett, or Penny. So that supervises each, they supervise the principal.
So that there could be this, it's just.
You think the wording should be different?
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
just.
We can look at the
if,
wording.
If a non-school
Person is
familiar
reading it.
person's reading it, they won't know, as I wondered, who is
Okay.
there. So, principal will inform his or her
Yep.
executive director, his school's executive director. I mean, just some little clarifier right there.
We can look at the wording.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. So I'll jump back down to, you see the steps for the MTAC chairperson, and we kind of remember when the board asked us to look at this policy, they asked us to really outline a clear step process. So you see the MTAC chairperson will, and we outline exactly what the MTAC chairperson will do. And then the next person, the next part, we actually have the review of the policy 3210, and it outlines that they will review that policy. We wanted to make sure they did that. And we basically, the whole process, it makes this a formal process. So if you go over to page 2, we actually outline the legal statute that says why you can actually challenge a book. And we make sure we outline because it is in the state statute, it is unsuitable, is vulgar, or inappropriate for the age. So you will notice in the forms, when we get to the forms, that when someone is challenging the book, they will select one of the reasons under the state guidelines or the state statute that it falls on that they're selecting that book. So we actually outline that as well. So then, if you go, we actually put within 5 school days, we provided a timeline for feedback. The MTAC would vote. Yes, ma'am?
You said they'd select one of those. You meant one or more of those, right?
One or more, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And then the response will be determined by the principal. They will have to actually provide in writing, and you see it will be either certified by mail or by email. And there again, they will have to make sure their executive director knows as well, and the decision to the school staff as well. Now, this part at the bottom, you will see the school staff also has a step of recourse. They can also have a process to, if they're dissatisfied with the decision. So they can also have a process. That is something that we added. Okay? So the next step is the district. So that was the school process, and then we do the district process. So it's basically the same, but at this level, it's recommended that the district, the director of curriculum and instruction chair challenges related to the curriculum material. The director of curriculum and instruction chairs the challenges related to curriculum material, and the lead school librarian, media coordinator related to things that are in our media center. So the person who actually leads the chairs the challenge is different here at the district level, and it depends on what it is. If it is something at curriculum, it will be the director of curriculum and instruction. If it's something in our media center, then it will be our lead media coordinator, person at the district level. So they will follow the same type of guidelines, and they are outlined here. We have those outlined. They can also have the same things by general statute that they will go by. They can choose one or more of those. And they can come to the same conclusion. They can reach a simple majority decision with the chairperson abstaining from the vote. And I did not highlight that last time, but the chair abstains from the vote, and they will either uphold the school's MTAC decision, overturn it, or and then they can retain the material, remove the material, place the material at another school, and those things are the same thing, or regulate the material. The chairperson will write a response to requests for reconsideration within 5 days of the MTAC vote. And you notice that these dates and timelines are things that are different because we want to make sure that we've given parents a timeline so they'll know that when the response will come, and it will be delivered to the superintendent. And there again, that recourse at the bottom. Now, this is something, the next section, we changed from hearing from the board. One of the things that you said was, we didn't have the opportunity to look at the materials prior to making our decision if we wanted to hear, if we wanted to decide whether we were going to hear a book challenge. So before the board makes any decision if they're going to hear a book challenge, you will notice that the steps have changed. You would examine the challenged material and the complaints. And you will weigh all the merits. So you will look at all the materials prior to determining if you're going to hear a challenge. So the steps have changed, and you see that's outlined there. And then you, of course, would have the same, if you look at page 4, you would have the same reasons that you would make your decisions based on, and then you or the attorney would make a decision and communicate that decision. And because of time, I'm just going to just highlight the first form. It's basically the same form. This is the request for reconsideration form. I do want to highlight that the one major change that we are doing is this form must be filled out to initiate the process. We're requiring that the form initiates the process. We're not accepting an email. We want the form filled out. So you will see that we have a couple of things in here. We're requiring that the parent has reviewed the policy. We are asking that they have talked to the school, because a lot of times before we do this process, we can resolve it at the school. And they're again going to check with statute that they are basing their request for reconsideration on what evidence they have and so forth. And then it could go on at the school, the district, and of course at the board level.
I just had a question about
Sure.
the authoritative resources. Could you expand a little bit on that? I know we're limited on time, but could you expand a little bit about some examples of authoritative resources?
So that could be, actually, look some up. Let me give you some. I actually have some. Sorry. Separation. I'm not ready for that. Sorry. So it could be publisher weekly, school, library journal, children's literature. It could be different resources like that. You don't have to look at all of them, but we want you to go to resources that are credible to get some different information as you are looking at making your decision.
So things like historical documents, things like that would also be included in that?
I'll let Mrs. Hudson, would historical documents, and Ms. Hudson is our head media coordinator or head librarian for the district. Would that be, I don't know if that would be considered. Dr. Mary Alice Hudson.
That wasn't the intent of that. The intent was professional reviewing sources, such as the ones that were listed. They're journals that's their whole purpose is to review materials. So it would be like, as opposed to an Amazon review.
Okay. Can I ask why those were not considered authoritative? If they were, if it is in reference to accuracy of, a historical document, using the historical document to prove does that?
My assumption would be that would be included in a journal review of that material.
But you wouldn't use the document itself as a resource?
I would assume that those journals do.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if I'm going to get a source of information, I want it direct from the source. So I don't necessarily want to just go from a reviewed document, because that's a quoting of a source, and somebody's review of a source. If I want to go direct to the source, I want to direct. So I'm just wondering if those could be included in that.
I guess my thought of it is a number of times they will not be historical documents. So I don't think, and Dr. Hudson, you please chime in, but I don't think there would be an issue if you went to the Declaration of Independence to look at the document, but a number of the items that we will be talking about would not be historical, right? So you wouldn't have that opportunity, but to go to, if it's a historical document, to go to the historical source, I don't think we would have a problem with that. I mean,
Okay,
I just think most of the time the documents will not probably be historical, but if you can go to the historical
yes,
source,
'cause if
I
it's a
don't think
fictional
anybody would have
document,
a problem
yeah.
with that.
No, I
Do you,
absolutely.
Dr. Hudson?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Bradford.
I have that same concern.
Dr. Hudson, you want to stay up here?
I had that same concern, and, you know, I'm a journalist, I can write a review. I may or may not have accurate facts in it. So when you go to an actual historical document, then you have your actual facts. So, and a review is an opinion. No matter how credentialed you are, it's still your opinion, and you can have opposing reviews all over the place.
I think,
So I'm a little concerned about that.
if I might, I think that the thought process, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is many may be along the lines of a fictional
Yeah. Yeah,
piece
most
of
the book-
work, so
most
you're not
of-
going to have that.
Okay.
But if it does come to that, then those would be acceptable
Yeah.
uses of,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, if it's historical, you can always go to the if it's historical, if you can go to the historical source, by all means, go there. But I would say, Dr. Hudson, and you please speak to this, I would assume most of the documents that reach this stage are not historical documents or books, or are they? Then maybe they are, I don't know.
We've only had one challenge,
Oh,
so,
okay, so.
and that was a
but-
nonfiction book, so.
Okay, combination. I was thinking at the school level, I wasn't thinking at the district level, so I don't know, but yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Ms. Craybill, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to say that I like the third of the form, and I also just wonder, what are the yellow highlights? Why are there so many of them? Because I was trying to go back and compare with the old form, and it looks like you revamped the whole thing, which is a good revamp, but am I supposed to have my eyes drawn to these yellow highlights in some way?
Yes, ma'am. The yellow highlights are the actual changes, Ms. Craybill, and a lot of the yellow highlights are just movements. If you recall, we were asked to make the document more of a streamlined step-by-step process. So a lot of the document is a step-by-step process. It's making it, some of the information was already in here. So it might be moved, or we added some wording and it was not redlined, so I forgive us for that, but the yellow are the changes.
All right.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work. This was really good.
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to move this forward, this request for reconsideration form forward to the board.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Oh, it's 52. It's policy 5210.
It's under 3210.
3210.
We didn't make any changes to 3210. It's just the request for reconsideration. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Moving on. Board committees. And the reason for this was that there was a need to adjust the universal application due to some changes that have occurred and possibility of adding, with some discussion, to that form.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Ms. Bradford.
For the purpose of discussion, I will move that we accept this with the red changes that we have.
Okay, so can I ask a question? What resolutions are you talking about? The ones that I submitted last night?
No, the
Ms.
one,
Cadesi says yes.
are those the ones that,
Yeah,
were
that's
the
what we're
ones-
looking at now.
that's what we're looking
It
at?
adds student, the, selected, below, it's very small, and then something
Yes.
denotes students. Yeah,
Yes.
that's it.
Okay, I'm good with that.
All right. So was that a second?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 3-0.
It's 22:30.
So, Ms. Mason, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, ma'am.
So when are we going to put this, I think we need to talk about it as a board. I don't know about the policy committee so much, but we need to figure out, when this is going to be, released, where it's going to be published, where the applications are going to go, that kind of thing. They're just semantics on what we do with it, now that we have it approved again. So maybe we put that on as a follow-up, for June, since we're out of school, we can apply over the summer once we get it working.
I believe what you're saying, because you cut out a little bit, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you would like to discuss, once we approve this, how we can implement it as quickly as possible, where we can place it, how people can find it. Is that correct?
Yes, and also who it's going to go to. Like, is it going to feed back to Ms. Tedeschi, and then she funnels it out, that kind of thing. So it's one thing to fill it out, but then where's it going to go, and who's going to get it?
Okay.
So yes, that's a good summary of what I said.
Okay. Noted. Okay. Next set of policies, well, 2320, 2335, and 2310 we have as separate. I'm going to move that we talk about all of them together.
Second.
Oh, and 2300, I'm sorry.
So we're going to listen to 2300.
2320, 2335, and 2310. Did you second that?
I did.
They're all in reference to the time frames and making it consistent across all the policies.
Mhm.
Any discussion on grouping them together? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Was that a yes or a no? I'm going to go with an aye.
That was a yes for me. Yes.
Okay, thank you. It was a little delayed. So we're going to discuss these together. So I actually sat down with, to get some clarification about timeframes. And so my proposal, which I did not get to add because the discussion happened after this was posted, was that I would like to go back to the way that it's been. My understanding is the original policy was established in fall of 2020, and that was, the policies indicated that notice was 5 days prior to the day of the meeting. No business days were in there, nothing like that. And additionally, the notice for specially called meetings was at least 48 hours. And so I would propose that we revert back to those timeframes, but I'm
Second.
willing to discuss.
Second.
Okay, so it's in a lot of places, and I have found most of them, but Ms. Craybill, if you wouldn't mind, I'm sure you have been doing some digging as well. I didn't know if you had any commentary about it. Is she gone? She is gone. Okay, well, Ms. Craybill is gone. So in 2300, we have it As of right now, under specially called meetings, we have it of at least 48 hours notice. I'd like to leave that as is. And that's in there twice, so I'd like to leave that as is.
Where's the second one?
It's on the.
Oh, I got it.
Do you see it? On policy 2320. Under compliance and notice, I would like to change the wording of 6 business days to 5 days. And the 48 hours notice. If I miss any, Ms. Bradford, please do let me know.
I'm giving it my, I've already done this, but I'm following along with you.
In 2335, we would change the verbiage to, instead of 6 business days, 5 days. And leave the 48 hours prior to the start of the meeting.
One more.
For policy 2310, under A, first paragraph, at least 5 days. And I think that's all
it
of
for
them.
that one, isn't
There
it?
was also, it was indicated that at this time for the agenda reviews, the current agenda is posted 4 days ahead of the agenda review meeting. I'm open to not codifying that, or we can codify that. What are your thoughts, Ms. Bradford?
So,
Putting it as 4 business days prior to the agenda review,
I thought we were
or
going to not use the business word.
not business days, I meant 4 days.
What page is that?
It is, I believe it's 62.
Okay, so under A, request to place an item on the agenda.
It's the second to last paragraph. Superintendent shall notify the requesting party of the response to the request prior to the agenda. Well, maybe it wouldn't go there. It's not,
Under A, where the 5 days is there, that doesn't cover it? Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
prior to, no, prior to the agenda review. It does cover it, yes.
Okay.
So I would like to make a motion to amend 2300, 2320, 2335, 2310 with those changes mentioned.
Second?
And forward it to the board. Second. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 2-0. We are running
And Madam Chair?
real close. Yes, ma'am.
In terms of our time, we have 5 recommended substantial policy amendments from NCSBA. I would ask that we take the 4th one and move it forward for discussion now, and then put the other 3 behind if we get time to them, because I have some questions on them, and that may become timely. So I'd rather hear one that I don't have any questions on.
3620.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's move that forward and do it first.
All right, and I will second that.
Let me find it.
Any discussion?
Hold on, I gotta find it. Just go to the back of the book. 87? Thank you. Oh, yeah.
I have tabs, sticky notes. They help me. Otherwise, I'd be lost.
Yeah. No, I am good.
All right.
So I move for adoption.
All right. So all those in favor of moving this up in the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 2-0.
So then we vote on it.
we can make a motion.
I make a motion that we send it on to the full board for approval as it's written, as it's changed.
And I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 2-0. We have roughly 10 minutes. How many questions do you have, Ms. Bradford? I guess is
You want
the,
to just do them in order? Let's start with the first one, 4002.
I am good with
I
that.
don't
Let's
know
do
if we
that.
have enough staff here to talk to my questions,
know.
but we'll see.
We've lost a few.
4002.
It's a long one.
Okay. It's probably Ms. Kadetsky for you, this, on page 72, in this very tiny, tiny little print, number G. I'll be honest, it doesn't make sense. I think there's
Q?
some words missing.
Q?
So if you go, PQ, yes, good old Q. Let me pull it up on my screen because this is so tiny I can't see it. But if I go all the way back to the very first, number 3, addition annual notifications. Run all the way down.
Yeah.
If the schools and the school system is identified by the State Board of Education as low performing, the notifications required by, nothing else after it. I think there's something missing there. I don't know what it is.
I have the statutes listed on mine. You don't have the statutes listed?
Yeah, but still. Ms. Brinson, are you in agreement? It doesn't quite identify what it is.
Yeah, I think just some clarification at the end, the notification required of that will be,
Consistent with?
yeah.
Okay, something like that.
So you'd like to change the verbiage on that?
Consistent with,
Or, because all the other ones have that semicolon afterwards, what's the very last one say? And this might be one that Mr. Vogel might want to, because we're talking about state statute.
Mr. Vogel, are you with us?
Mr. Vogel?
Yes, I'm on.
Page
So
72.
we're on policy 1310-4002, part Q.
Okay.
What was your question, Ms. Bradford?
It seems to be missing some verbiage. If I go back to the beginning, and this is the only thing we're adding right here, so I just didn't understand the intent. If I go all the way back to 3, additional annual notifications, if the school district and/or the school system is identified by the State Board of Education as low performing, I understand that part, the notifications required by, there's something missing.
I think reading it consistently with 3, the principal or designee shall annually notify parents of the following information.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that go,
The information is whether the school
Is
and the
identical.
school system identified by SBE as low performing.
okay.
And
Good
and
then.
just for your information, we already do that.
Yeah.
I'm good then. I move that we send policy 1310-4002 on to the board as written, as amended.
And I will second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those in favor?
Oh, aye, sorry.
Any opposed? That passes 2-0.
I'm trying to keep up.
Next one, 1760-7280.
Okay. All right, I have a question. I need to make it bigger
It's a short policy.
so I can read it. The language in red. To be protected by this policy, employees who report violations or suspected violations must be acting in good faith based on a reasonable belief that the reported information represents wrongdoing of the sort described in this policy. we're deleting an unlawful activity, policy, or practice. And then wrongdoing is mentioned twice. So I think Dr. Barnes's question is for you, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
It seems like it's loosening it instead of tightening it. We're on page 80. No problem. And I just want to know that you're okay with this, I guess.
Yeah, because these are NCSBA recommendations.
Yeah. I mean, we're changing unlawful activity, policy, or practice to wrongdoing of any sort. That seems to me to be a subjective thing, wrongdoing of any sort.
For me, it provides a little more flexibility to maybe put something in there that may not be unlawful, but maybe something that we feel is against policy. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. All right. Madam Chair, I move that we move policy 1760, 7280 to the full board as amended.
And I will
Oh,
second.
we're going to do it.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 2-0.
We're down to one? Or no?
We have two left, 2127, which is board member technology use.
Spencer's still here. Okay. I have a question on page 84. And under definitions, well, I have a couple things here. At the top of the page, the very first paragraph, it talks about board members expected to exercise good judgment in their online interactions, remaining mindful of their ethical obligations described in policy 2120, Code of Ethics for School Board Members. I sure wish we abided by that. So that's more of just a comment.
There it is.
But then we come down to E. Board members should not, and this is existing, right? Board members should not use personal social media to harass, bully, intimidate students, employees, or other board members. So I'd like to amend that and add the word vendors, because we've had some of that go on, and I'd like to add under E on page 84, personal social media use, E, after bully, or intimidate students, employees, vendors, or other board members.
And I will second that. Anything? Oh, are you
Yeah.
done with your motion?
No, yeah, well, I still have a couple of the concerns. You want me to do this now, or just,
Do they involve any changes?
well,
Then I will retract my second.
if you
that's
would,
indeed the case.
no, I'd like to, I mean, can we vote on that and then?
Absolutely. Okay, so amending to add on, of the policy, page 3, but of our packet, page 84, guidelines for all types of personal social media use, part E, to add the word vendors ahead of or. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes 2-0. What other questions?
Page 85, it's just mind-blowing to me that, I think that's all covered under First Amendment rights, but it does bother me a great deal that that would be added into this policy. It was very late at night when I wrote these comments, so they're more opinionated than I am right now. But I guess I'm fine with that.
All right, then I make a motion, we move this amended, this policy forward with the changes, the amendments that we made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Oops, wrong place.
Okay.
That passes 2-0. And last one is 4040 and
Yep.
7310.
Let me pull it up. If you go to page 95, the top of the page, I'd like to know why the deletions. And I don't know if anybody can explain it to me, since we didn't make the deletions, the School Board Association did, but I don't know, maybe the attorney has to weigh in on it, but I don't get why we're deleting the things that we're deleting. Mr. Vogel, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
So page.
It starts on the bottom of 30494, just one sentence. Report to the State Board of Education and local Board of Education in accordance with, shall report to, but we deleted all of those people in the conduct over there on the right, and that kind of bothers me. Dr. Barnes, same thing. You know, I'd like your opinion here. Seems like it really loosens that up. And after the history of this county, I'd like it to be the whole kitchen sink.
Dr. Barnes, do you have any thoughts on that?
I will say that in the past, we've exceeded this policy anyway.
Okay.
To the extent that we'll report things to DPI anyway. I don't know, I would have to dig into the legal references on the bottom to see why they changed that. I don't see that it would change what we're doing anyway. However, I'm not sure why NHCSBA took that out.
Yeah. Madam Chair, then I would move that we hold this one, 4040, 7310, so we can get Dr. Barnes' opinion, find out from NCSBA, why they did that, and then the attorney's opinion on it too, because that's a lot to delete there. That's a lot.
And I will second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 2-0. Just to review, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because there was a lot. For existing policies for amendment at the next regular meeting with no changes, 3210, 2230, 3620, 1310, 4002, 1760, 7280. With existing policies for amendment with changes, 7300, 3200, with the verbiage that has been added, 5210 with the grammar, 2300, 2320, 2335, 2310, 2127, and policies held in committee, 4040 and 7310. Do you have, does that line up?
I think so. You got
All right.
1310 and 4002, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. All right, with that,
Move to adjourn.
I move to adjourn. You move to adjourn? And I will second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time.